Today's chat is with John Elliott. John's a legendary photographer, particularly in the country music industry. He's worked with all the biggest artists and he's got a wealth of knowledge and information. So I hope you enjoy the chat. Now, if you do enjoy it, please subscribe. Still working this stuff out. Subscribe. Please click the button. It doesn't cost you anything. It just lets you know that there are more episodes coming up when new episodes come up. If you have a story you'd like to tell and share with people, just email me at aussielocalandlive@gmail.com and I'll get back to you and we'll get you on for the show. Finally, if you really want to help out, put your camera on the QR code. It takes you to my website where you can put some dollars in the tip jar. 100% of it comes to me for the show. So check that out. So, John Elliott, enjoy the chat. All right. Once again, I get the pleasure of chatting to someone who's been a good friend for a long time, but also someone I've greatly admired, and he's had a huge influence on our local music industry, particularly in the country sector. Photographer, legendary photographer, Mr. John Elliott. How are you, mate?
Good, Nick. It's good to see you, mate.
It's good to see you too. So you're out bush at the moment.
I spend a lot of my time. When I decided to be a photographer a long time ago, I thought I really wasn't cut out to be a real estate photographer or a wedding photographer, photograph washing machines. Yeah. And I thought, what would I really like to do? And I love regional parts of Australia. I love the Australian bush. So I thought, maybe I can find some work out there. And I love music, particularly country music. So I didn't even know photographing country music was a thing. So I concentrated on the country music and the bush. And luckily for me, it's worked out all right. I'm doing a book up in Winton at the moment. So I've been spending probably more time than I should, but I love it out here.
I didn't realise until you sent me some of the notes for today that besides photography, you've actually done 15 books.
Yeah, I was lucky. Back in, I'd always dreamed, I didn't know how you did books or who paid or how it all worked out. But I was living up in Toowoomba in the mid-'80s, and I loved the annual show, like the Ag Show. And the one in Toowoomba particularly is a blockbuster. It runs for about a week. And the show in Toowoomba had been in the middle of the city almost for 100 years. And 1985 was the last show there. So I didn't have much money, but I bought 100 rolls of film, and I thought I'm just going to turn up and photograph that last show. And I got financial help. My father-in-law tipped in a lot of the money, and we published a beautiful book called The Last Show. And luckily for me, I went ahead and did that. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have done any other books. And I've gone on to do books with major publishers and still self-published a lot of books. We've got lots of books going on at the moment.
Okay, mate, we'll come back and visit this, but you were Slim Dusty's photographer for a huge part of his career. And I know that you've been given many awards over the years and sort of, tied in with things around the industry. But I was just going to start by asking you about one of the things you sent me about the 1,000-mile stare.
Yep.
And that's portrait photography. So, was that a lot mainly country artists, and what was that about, the 1,000-mile stare?
I had taken a picture of Slim Dusty and Edna Everage in 1992 at a concert over at Carlton Hill Station in the outback, outback of Western Australia.
I brought it up there.
Yeah, there we go. So I got sent up to Carlton Hill Station to photograph that concert for Who Weekly, and that picture didn't make it into the magazine. I think it might have made it eventually into the magazine, but I just took that as a snapshot backstage while I was waiting to go on stage. And I knew when I clicked, it only took about 7 or 8 frames. I knew that it was a really important photograph. It sort of says a lot about Australia, a country music superstar with a drag queen superstar, and they're obviously good mates.
Yeah.
So 5 or 6 years later, I read in the Courier Mail or the Australian that the federal government were going to open the National Portrait Gallery, and I had a rush of blood. I thought that shot would be great in their collection. So I called Andrew Sayers, the director of the gallery, who I'd never met, told him about the photograph, and he said, "Oh, sounds perfect. I'd love to have a look at it." took me about 6 months to find the negative and get a print done. They bought it well before the gallery opened. But when they opened the gallery, they used that on the invitation for the opening of the very first exhibition. And that opened up so many doors for me on a national level. And I eventually get a call back in the early 2000s from the gallery because they were aware of the work that I did in the bush. And the portrait gallery really deals in celebrity. They wanted me to do an exhibition of famous people in the bush. And I said, well, I've got some of those, but everyone in the bush has a story and they're all superstars. So they commissioned me to travel all over Australia and photograph people in the bush. And they're all tight portraits, really head and shoulders. And it was all about the look in their eyes. Everyone in the bush looks as if they're staring off into the distance. And that's where the title came from. And it was amazing to have, I started life taking pictures for myself in Blackwell in Western Queensland. I sort of taught myself, went to college for a little bit, but to have a show in the National Portrait Gallery is pretty special.
Absolutely. Mate, you're right. It's amazing. So many people, and especially from the country, their faces tell a story. You've got it in the eyes and then everything else in their face. There's so many stories that you just see within that whole skin text as well.
I love photographing people, and I think everyone has a story. And I feel that I'm more a storyteller than a photographer now. And I think it's my job to find those interesting people with interesting stories and convince them to let me take pictures of them and, share those stories with the rest of Australia.
Well, mate, can I read something out that you sent to me that Doug Hall, the former director of the Queensland Art Gallery, said about you? So John Elliott is a storyteller.
I'm not going to be embarrassed, am I?
Mate, well, it's from your bio, mate. John Elliott is a storyteller. He travels widely and likes people, especially those without self-importance and bombast. He has seldom been bothered with unmasking pretense, let alone depicting it, and gathers trust easily. Whether portraits of Aboriginal friends or the people at a country music festival, rural workers or the urban tattooed punks, it's always John Elliott's empathy and interest which holds our attention, no matter how quietly measured or capriciously impulsive certain images may appear. I mean, that's a hell of a compliment from Doug. And I think it's what we try and do as songwriters and musicians, is capture those little moments and those stories that we see around us and reflect them. And obviously, in that sense, you're a true musician through your photography.
You're right on the money there, Nick. I think our job as storytellers, and there are storytellers using all sorts of things to tell their stories, it's our job to find and to get to the essence of it. Often it's not the fluffy stuff around, like what's going on around a person. And in songwriting, I love analysing songwriters, and the songwriters do a great job, tell these incredibly complex and big stories, but they tell them simply and straight to the point, and hits you in the heart. And I try and do that with my photographs.
Yeah, that's so much the challenge I find with songwriting, is to how many words can you get rid of and capture what you're trying to say, because you're not writing a novel. Obviously, you're writing a very concise piece of, it's got a limited time span. And you look at a song like, I think it's perfectly captured in a song like John Lennon's Imagine. Such simplicity in the words, but so meaning, and we're all aiming to do that. And mate, without having any knowledge of photography at all, I've always assumed that's been the same thing for photography. How do you actually tell that complex story simply?
I've been fortunate, like, photograph you when you were a young fella, and I normally charge and get money out of it. But what I really, especially if there's a singer-songwriter in front of me, I normally get to hear some of the songs they're writing at the moment. But I love chatting.
I can't remember what I paid you back then, but it wouldn't have been very much, because you were like pretty much giving your time to help me out as an artist. And you've done that with so many artists. And I'll just mention some bloke here who he's had a bit of an all right run. Got a picture of Mr. Urban there.
Incredible.
Very young Mr. Urban. And I guarantee you probably weren't charging much for those photo shoots.
No, I did them for the right odds, but it was good with Keith. He was managed by a mutual friend of ours, Nick Greg
Yeah.
Shaw, and Shorey was right on. Like every time Keith had changed his haircut, I'd get the call to come and do more pictures. And at
That
that
was a
stage,
weekly
Keith
gig.
his haircut often. He went through that Billy Idol period there for a while.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting. You knew Keith well back then as well, and you know, people in America say, "Oh, Keith Urban's a great guitar player." I said he was a great guitar player when he was about 13. Like, there's no
Absolutely.
surprise,
No.
and you could tell back then he never had a fallback position. He was never going to be a mechanic if the music didn't work.
No.
You
No.
know,
And he hung in there and things end up going the right way
yeah.
for him. But at the same time as saying that too, I mean, Keith's super talented. Don't get me wrong, and particularly as a guitarist, he's just a brilliant guitarist, one of the best in the world. But there are also a lot of other good artists around at the time who just didn't get those same breaks and things didn't go the right way. But what you learn is that, and what I'm trying to do with my little chat session here is no matter where people end up, everyone's had a story and a journey they've gone through. And
Yep.
doesn't, whether you get to the top of the commercial ladder or not, each story is as important as each other, and the craft and the art you make is as important as each other as well.
Yeah, I because I'm older than most photographers now, I'm happy to share my wisdom. Um, I've literally been taking pictures since I was 11. I'm 74, so that's 63 years.
Mm.
And one of the things I tell people, and it's not just photography, it's if you work in any creative area, you can't stop, you can't give up. Uh,
Mm.
I think I'm getting, and it's not ego, I'm getting better at taking
Mm.
pictures now than I've ever been because I kept going.
I
You know, you
often,
just got to, same songwriting, you just got to keep going.
well, I feel the same way about my singing and performing. I think I'm still doing it, and I think I'm actually. There's not a night goes by where I'm not learning something new that I just kind of. It's not a big revelation, but there's something that just makes me do it that bit better. And I think
Yeah.
that's keeps you a bit mentally young in our game too. Is that every day you wake up and there's a new challenge to try and figure out, or a new challenge to meet. And I could never have been in a job where I'd turn up, I knew what I was going to do for the next 40, 50 years
Yep.
and get the payout and whatever. I kind of thrive on having that thing where you wake up every day, trying to figure out what you're going to achieve that day, and doesn't very often lead to a lot of success, but it certainly feeds your soul pretty well.
Absolutely. I used to, back in the day, I'd get a little stressed not knowing what was coming up in the future and that. But I guess 15 years ago, I had this epiphany, this revelation. I thought, you know what? I don't need to know what I'm doing next week. Sunday
Mhm.
at 7 o'clock in the evening, that's when I can work out what I'm doing next week. So I have a
Yeah,
vague plan about the future, but I don't flesh it out with details till 7 o'clock on Sunday night.
yeah.
I'm a bit unbearable to live with, I guess, because people try and nail you down for next week. And I don't know. I
I
work it
just
out on
I just
Sunday.
don't. Yeah, I just don't feel like I need the stress of worrying about it. I'll figure out what's
No,
going to happen. I'll
no.
figure out the next thing, and we all kind of get through. Mate, you talk about the characters you met. Can I bring up this photo of Fred? What the whole outback touring carnival thing. You've had a fair bit to do with a lot of those people, haven't you?
Absolutely. I've been lucky, uh, and it wasn't a plan really. I sort of hooked up with sideshow and circus people really early on,
Hmm.
and it's a subculture where, like, if you know Fred Brophy, and Fred will speak on you, if he'll let people know you're not a wanker, it opens up doors. Like even today, most sideshow people, they might have heard about me or they know that I've photographed Fred Brophy over a number of years. Uh, so it's winning people's trust to get to take photographs like that of Fred. He's got to open up his heart and soul in front of the camera. And I tend to find that they don't do that if you're a wanker. So
Yeah.
best not to be
Yep.
a wanker. But I was
Exactly.
lucky over the years. It's exactly the same thing that I experienced with sideshow and circus people. I did some work with Federal Publishing in the early 90s, and did some photography for Live to Ride magazine, the bikie magazine.
Mm-hmm.
But I did some other photography for another title, Australian Tattoo, they published. And once again, I looked like an undercover cop back then, and they'd send me off to bikie shows. And I'm sure half them suspected I was a copper. But, if you're fair dinkum, that eventually wins people over.
Talking about the government jobs and that, was that one?
Oh, yeah, that was a bit of a thrill. I still get a thrill when I see my work published, but when I saw one of my pictures on a stamp, that was a big thrill. Slim had a big joke. He said, "Yeah, I'd never thought everyone would be licking my bum to put me on a letter." But yeah, that was a thrill. To see that happen. That was back in 2000 when Slim was one of the Australian legends on the stamps.
So I know you guys are so close, but what was your relationship like with Slim? Was he like a mentor or like a big brother, or what? How would you vocalize what your relationship was like with him?
First of all, he was a mate, really. But he sort of Joy was a mate as well, but Joy was almost like my mother because my mum and dad died back in 79 and 80. So Joy sort of became a surrogate mother. Slim was sort of a mate. But I was so lucky. When I decided I was going to photograph country music, and I'm thinking, well, Slim's the boss, so maybe I could call Slim, and I did, but it took me a long time. He eventually called back, and he was in Sydney, and I was living in Brisbane at the time, and he said, "I'll call you when I'm coming to Brisbane." A couple of months later, he called, came over to the studio I was at Red Hill, and we did some pictures. It wasn't a big deal. We just took some pictures. They turned out really well. And from that day on, like if the record company wanted a picture of Slim in Sydney, he would say, "Yeah, just got to get John Elliott down from Toowoomba to do it, or Brisbane." And that went on for that lasted about 20 years. And over that time, it was a dream because I was a huge fan. When I was a kid in Blackhall, Mum and Dad would drag us, me and my brothers, down to see the Slim Dusty show at the Blackhall Memorial Hall. But yeah, so went from that to being a friend, and it was all the photos with Slim. He really, when he'd have a new album coming out, he'd have lots of opinions. A couple of the guys at the record company were involved in that process as well, and Mark Jago, the guy that did his video, had a lot of input into what we shot. But yeah, it was a dream come true. Like I dreamed about taking a picture of Slim Dusty, and I got to take 20 years worth, and had some amazing trips. I went on tour with him a couple of times. Went to the Solomon Islands for a big concert he did. I went to Nashville when he played at the Grand Ole Opry. And do you know who the backing band was? It was Keith Urban and the Ranch.
The Ranch, really?
I think it was the first time that Keith had played at the Opry.
Right. Wow. But
it was amazing.
Did Slim was he sort of consciously aware of how much of an iconic figure he was, not just to the industry, but to Australia? Or was it something that was just his life and he was just living his life and it kind of didn't really, wasn't a daily thought to him? What was he like in that?
I think he was aware of it. It didn't impact his life at all. He was definitely, and there weren't two Slims. A lot of people are different on stage when they're off.
Yep.
Slim off stage was exactly the same as Slim on stage.
Right.
But it was interesting. On tour, for instance, we're in, I think Keith was traveling with us in Moree, and I get out of bed early, and Slim used to get up pretty early. We went for a walk one morning, and when we go back, we go into the corner store over the road from the motel, and he bought a newspaper or something. And later in the day, I was back there getting lunch, and I hadn't noticed, but Slim didn't have his hat on when we went for a walk. And when I went back into the shop in the middle of the day, the guy said, "You were in this morning and there was someone with you." He said, "All day I've been trying to think who it was." I said, "Oh, that was Slim Dusty." And he said, "What?" I didn't recognize him.
Yeah,
it was
without
hat on.
Yeah,
most
that's
people
right.
would put their hat on, but he took his off so that no one recognized him.
You'd never have filmed him without his hat, would you? Shot him without his hat?
It was interesting. Once when we were in Western New South Wales somewhere, So he never wanted to wear a brand new hat.
Right.
He used to call it breaking them in. He'd make them look a bit older before he wore them in public.
Yep.
And we're out on the side of a road somewhere, and he said, "Get your camera and stand over there and get ready. I'll show you how I break these hats in." And he took his hat off and danced on it. And got it dirty and dusty and that. So I think that was the only picture I ever took without his hat on.
And where's that one taken that we're looking at now?
We're on tour, and we're in Broken Hill, and that's at Silverton, which is a very famous little town where they shoot movies. I think they did some of the Mad Max movie there, just out of Broken Hill.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of shots with Slim, but I'm thrilled that I did get some.
Mate, what the changes in the game now? Like obviously back in all those days, you were using film. Do you still use film, or is it all digital now?
No, I don't miss the old days at all. I have embraced digital tech. I love it, especially with photographing live music. It was difficult with film. It wasn't difficult, but it was more difficult. But with digital stuff, it's like turning the lights on. You can photograph in total black almost. And it's really advanced in the last couple of years. Probably 80% of what I shoot on my phone now.
Right.
Like
really?
I can get a 48 megabyte file out of my phone. I can print like 2 meters square, and you can't tell the difference.
Yeah. Well, they're making movies out of phones now, aren't
they? I still photograph lots of events, lots of music events, particularly, and do social media content. And the video off the phone is incredible. And I don't even. The older I've got, the less gear I have, and the better pictures I take. And I don't have any of those fancy gimbals. The phone I use, it is so stable. I can handhold and do an interview. You would swear that it was bolted down.
So, mate, is it fair to say that? Is it fair to say that the digital change kind of actually frees you up to be more artistic in your own personal abilities?
I believe so.
Yeah.
You've still got to know where to stand and how to point it. And also, if I see someone interesting in the street, I will always approach them and say, "Do you mind if I take a picture?" I don't think I've ever had a knockback on my phone. But if you start reaching for your big clunky camera, people get a bit uncomfortable with that. But the phone never gets.
Well, everyone's so used to the phone now, isn't it? So much a part of everyone's life there. Yeah. But we've got that change in photography. Your association with music too. Where do you see the industry heading to, particularly on the grassroots level, which is where I'm more talking to people about? From my perspective, things have become actually over the years, since the 80s and 90s, it's become harder to make a regular living out of music. But at the same time, same story, it's become easier to create content because of the changes in technology. But we're still trying to find in our industry, I think, models that actually allow that to be commercialized better for artists. So I'm not sure. We still got to evolve those things. But mate, from your perspective, as a little bit of an outsider looking in, from being a photographer but being so closely involved to the music industry, where do you see it's heading to, in your opinion?
It's never going to be like it was in the old days. A lot of people, there's lots of Facebook pages and that all yearning for the old days. It's never going to be like that again. It is a lot harder, but there's always going to be people that find a way of breaking through. And I can speak firsthand about this. When I was up here, I lived in Winton for 5 years and left here about almost 5 years ago. When I was leaving, there was a young guy. He lives not just in Winton, which is remote. He lives an hour north on a property. His name is Wade Forster. Knockabout young bloke, cowboy, rides in rodeo, all that stuff. He was doing an apprenticeship to be an electrician. He'd gone to TAFE in Toowoomba. I think he was 18 at the time. And he was bored. He's walking back to where he was staying. There was a pawn shop with a guitar in it. He bought it, taught himself to play, taught himself to write songs. He made an album. It's the best first album I have ever heard. A guy called Simon Johnson, I believe, a bass player in Newcastle, produced it. And this is totally and absolutely by himself. he went in Star Maker and he won it not this year, last year. But before he went into Star Maker, it had like 3 or 4 million hits on Spotify.
Right.
From the outback of Queensland. Totally, he didn't spend any money. He just somehow, I don't know whether he instinctively knew what to do. I think a lot of rodeo people are pretty clever with marketing and promoting, even if they don't know it.
Yep.
So he's just put his second album. He's had like, I think it's 50 million hits on Spotify. So I don't know how that translates into money. But I remember 6 months ago, he did his first ticketed show in Townsville, and all my mates, the expert booking agent, saying he'd be lucky to sell 20 or 30 tickets. And after it, I phoned Wade and said, "How'd you go, man?" He said, "I sold 362 tickets. I was a bit disappointed. It's all the venue held." So I don't know why or how. But the other thing, you've got to have the guts to have a crack.
Absolutely.
So there was a guy called Cody Johnson that was touring out here as support for Luke Combs.
Yep.
And big star, huge star. Luke Combs is selling out everywhere.
Yep.
But he was a rodeo rider as well. So Wade Forster got on his computer or phone, sent him a message, said, "I've seen your tour schedule. You've got a weekend off and there's a rodeo in Cairns." He said, "If you want to come up, I'll have horses there and we can compete together in the team roping or something." So Cody Johnson, his wife, flew up to Cairns. Wade and him competed. They got on really well. They were doing 2 sellout shows at the Tennis Centre in Melbourne that week. And Cody Johnson said, "Wade, why don't you come down and do a couple?" So he got to do 5 songs in front of all these people.
Yeah.
Like, this is unheard of. So you've got to find, you've got to chip away. And I think this is what we all have to chip away at, whatever, especially in the creative area. Got to chip away every day to earn some money to pay your bills. Exactly. But you've got to every now and then have achieve a big goal somehow. Yep. And I think really successful people, they get the chip away worked out, and then they find ways of having those quantum leaps forward.
Yeah. And I think often too in those situations when you're chipping away, you can't really have plan B. Plan B just distracts from your plan B. You just got to keep going what you're doing. And success comes in different degrees too. It's not just always a commercial success, as we were saying before. It's about the achievement and actually creating art sometimes, which is hugely successful.
But Wade still lives at home up north of here, up north of Winton. And I think he did some shows in Brisbane on the weekend. It sold out. I think he's back in America for 3 weeks. And he's sold out I don't know how big the venues are, but he's sold out a 3-week tour in America as well.
Yeah, good.
But he'll
great.
Be back up near Kainoona, and like he's got it going on. So I think there are ways to break through. As a creative person that creates original songs, it's difficult because I know that a lot of those tribute bands make so much money. I think
it's true, but also I think there is just that thing there where people don't get to see a lot of those acts they used to grow up seeing in the 80s and 90s, and it's just a memory lane thing. Yeah. And so it becomes, I was talking to Johnny Blunt yesterday doing the Killer Queen thing, and he sees himself more as an actor than a musician. Yeah. He sees that he's a performer on stage. And I think that those shows certainly have an important role to play in giving those people those memory lane connections, taking them back to their youth and things they had. So I think they have a part in the whole scene, definitely. And they are easy to ticket in that sense that you don't really need to know the artist, because you're reflecting off who the artists were back in the day. Much harder when you're going out with new material as new artists, because people just don't know who you are. I mean, I've always said that every famous band is really a cover band in the way. Like the Rolling Stones, if they came out and did a whole new set of material that nobody knew, they would really struggle with their show. But they get out and play basically cover songs that people have heard for 40, 50 years. So it's that bridge of how do you get people to listen to your new material when they don't really know who you are, that's unfamiliar to them, and you've got to build that bridge. And there used to be a lot of ways where if you got signed with the right label, you could get on Countdown, or you could get on Stereo 10 or whatever. You had certain channels to do it. Now you've got all the stuff on the internet, but the problem with the internet is that there's like 10,000 songs released a day, and it's just a tsunami of music coming out there. So to learn what artists are doing and what these young artists are doing and everything else, that's things I'm curious to be asking and learning about, because the people are doing it, but I do think it is harder. It's not easier.
It's interesting. You would think that exactly what you're talking about only affects emerging artists, but Don Walker's a mate of mine, the keyboard player and songwriter with Cold Chisel. I've never had the heart, because he's still writing incredible millions of songs. But imagine if they got up and didn't do their hits, there'd be a riot. People would burn the venue down. It's it's a challenge. There's the other thing
Don touring by himself.
His band's still doing stuff. Killer songs, great, and it's a great show. But
great songwriter.
It's it's interesting. But I try and go and see lots of people I don't even know, and it's interesting. Some people have a real knack of doing exactly the right covers, but doing their original stuff in amongst it. I think there's a way of doing that. So I don't like, sometimes even with a well-known song, you don't even sit there and think, did they write it or didn't they write it? But if their songs are coming up in the middle of all that mix, I think it's about getting your song list right. It's
well, I know how to read a crowd. I mean, that's obviously when I do my little gigs, what I call the the mortgage payers, when we turn up in the pub and you're playing. I've always tried to blend my songs in with what I'm doing. And in those life situations, I see songs are bridges of communication. So you try and use maybe some familiarity points to get that attention, and then tell them your story about your song. Most people, if you're playing a good song, most people actually really like that, and they like to hear the story. It's just, if you go in cold without that connection, it's a really, really hard wall to break down. But that's, as I said, it's all part of learning the craft of how you do a gig and how you make those things work. Mate, where do people where's the best place to see your work?
I don't know why. I just find Instagram really clunky. I've got stuff on Instagram, but I've got a killer Facebook page. So if anyone's listening and they want to have a look, if they just go into the Facebook search engine and search for John Elliott Country, one word, it'll come up, and just click on that. So it's JOHN, all one word, ELLTTCOUNTRY.com. Oh, sorry, forget the .com.au. So just search John Elliott Country on Facebook and it'll come up.
No worries. And I'll put that down there in text before we put this thing out.
That much their nose will bleed, Nick.
Mate,
sorry. I was just going to say, with social media, you need to build. It's like the music industry. You need to build an audience. So you can't only hustle on Facebook or Instagram when you're trying to sell something. You've got a tour coming up and think, I better get on there. You need to communicate with your fan base or with your friends. You need to do, and you don't need to be manic about it, but you need to have them believing in you and interested in what you're doing, and get them feeling part of what you're doing. So when you've got a new bunch of songs out, or you're doing some shows around Brisbane or whatever, they're going to be ready to come along and support you. And it's amazing. I never even knew how to find out how many people were looking at my stuff, and had an argument with a government department, and this young social media expert said that, oh, you're old, you wouldn't know, and your numbers aren't that good. And I'd taken the trouble of finding out that most of the stuff they were posting was getting 5,000 and 6,000 views. I was in Winton on Anzac Day, and I did 2 30-second things about Anzac Day in Winton. And I got my IT guy a couple of weeks later to check my numbers so I could just, and I think we got 80,000 views on Anzac
Yeah.
Day. So it's just building that. It's like you said before, you've got to know what your audience wants. So
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
what people that look at my pictures are looking for. I find a way of finding those stories, and also you only get numbers like that when people share what you give them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's connecting with your audience, really.
So, mate, what do you see those things happening with the young musicians? Do you see any like young photographers around the place that have caught your attention?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say about music as well. You know, people tell me, oh, there's not much good music around today. It's because radio doesn't play a lot of new music.
Yeah.
It's the same with I've seen some incredible young photographers, but music in particular, if you go looking, there's as much good music, maybe even more good music around today than there ever has been. You've just got to
Absolutely.
find it.
Well, I say to
You
people
can't turn.
when people say to me, you get this thing, oh, the music was so good back in the 80s and 90s. Well, the thing is, good songs from that era survived, but there was a lot of crap back then as well, and that got
Yeah,
left behind. Same thing will
yeah,
happen now. When you get hit with everything, it takes a while for the really good stuff to stand out, and the crap will be left
yep,
behind. And now people will be saying, oh, the mid-20s, the songs were so great. It's the same cycle that happens all the time. There's always great songs being made, and I think the level of musicianship that some of the young artists coming out with now is just phenomenal. It's brilliant, but it is, it was
yeah,
probably
yeah.
easier back in the day where it was, as I say, being played on Stereo 10. You were seeing it on Countdown. It was on Raids. It was like multiple points. You were seeing those same group of songs for a while. Now there's just so many songs coming out at once. It's hard to actually get to hear them multiple times.
It's interesting. A friend of mine was a bush ballad singer and songwriter called Keith Jamison. He died 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. He lived up near Rockhampton. And I knew that his daughter, Caitlin, was a fiddle player and a guitar player, and she was interested in a career in music, and she was writing. She's still at school. And I drove up to Baldercombe near Rockhampton for Keith's funeral and service, and I'm listening to Triple J. And Caitlin has been playing with lots of well-established musicians, much older than her. And I was driving up listening to Triple J, and they had the Unearthed thing on. And Caitlin also plays in a rock band at a high school. They record in her bedroom. Like, I think there's a lot more of that going on today. Like, she's definitely a country musician, but she does some rock and roll, and I think that's healthy as well.
Absolutely. But I imagine the amount of characters you've met over the years is phenomenal, and we could talk forever about them, but I pull up this picture. There's a couple of characters for you.
Mate, I only knew Chad from about 1985 onwards, but he became a really close personal friend, and he lived in Toowoomba for a while. But he was a really good mate. Not many people know he's an electronics wizard. He used to make his own amps and mixers, and he was making guitars up until he died. And he got, I think it was SBS ran a documentary starring Chad, and it was called I'm Not Dead Yet. He got sick of people saying he died. And so they were making this doco, and I got a call from the film company, said Tex Perkins was going to do the voiceover for the doco, and he'd never met Chad. They paid me to go up to Chad's place at Caboolture for the day with Tex, and it was like, I'm so thrilled and thankful that I get to sit in and experience that. They spent a couple of hours. Tex Perkins, this is about respect. Tex Perkins knew a lot of early Chad Morgan songs, and they sat there swapping licks and singing Chad songs. And then they spent another couple of hours, because they both wear suits. They spent a couple of hours talking about where they get their suits made. But we did that, shot that. I had a big background cloth and just draped it off the side of his house, and we did those pictures out in the yard that neighbours must have known what.
It looks like it's in your old studio at Albion, mate.
Yeah, it does a bit, doesn't it? But yeah, I can. Yeah, Chad was a really good mate of mine, and I miss the old bugger. Yeah, he was He was one of the good guys for sure. They're not making any more like him.
Mate, so I know you got a million stories we could talk about, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to keep doing these things regularly, and I'd like to have you on again to chat about some of the characters you've met and some of the things, because, as I say, we could. It would be a super long episode if we went into that now, but if you're happy to come back on and have a chat, mate, I'd like to do that sometime.
Mate, I'd love to. If you ever get stuck and you've got no one to talk to, you can call me anytime.
Give you a call. Great. Yeah, because we have to filter out some of the stories that you'd know, mate. You've got them from all ranges of the community and all degrees of fun and debauchery and wildness with musicians.
We better be careful we don't get run out of town.
Mate, is there anything else you wanted to talk about particularly today, or?
No, I just, I consider that I think I'm good at what I do, and I respect the people that I photograph and that, but everyone I photograph, whether it's a rock star, country music star, or a rodeo rider at the Mount Isa Rodeo on the weekend, when people say, "Oh, if you're ever in town, drop around and have a cup of tea," say, "You better be serious, because I will." But there is no one that I've ever photographed that I couldn't knock on their door and be welcome again. And I work hard at that, and I value that relationship, and I don't take it for granted.
Oh, mate, well, I can tell everyone firsthand, just from my experience, how well respected you are by people within the industry and everything you've done. And also, we've got to say thank you to you for capturing so many moments too, mate, because all the stuff you've put together is there. It's timeless now. It's there. It's stuff that keeps the memory of everything alive. And to do them in such a professional way with such a good eye, mate, thank you very much for everything you do and have done.
Nick, you've got to find some of those early pictures I took of you. How long ago was that?
That would have been 88, 89, 90, around that time then. It was when I, just before I went to America, I had some singles out with Festival Music, and I was being managed back initially in those times by Jamie Dunn, and I was doing some regular stuff on Channel 7.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I was on the regular on Saturday morning jukebox, and he'd get us on to Wombat and everything else. But and Stereo 10, we had some songs chart up here. And then I think Jamie I met Greg Shaw through Jamie, and it was either through Jamie or Greg Shaw I met you, and we did photo shoots around those times with the singles. And then it had to be.
We both have to go and find some of those pictures.
Oh, well, I'll put some of them up, and I'll edit some of these into this so people can see the work that we did back then, because it was great. It was really enjoyed it, and I used those photos for many years. Trust me, they went well beyond my age limit date that I should have been using them for.
Good memories, mate.
It certainly are, mate. And we got some other friends. We should actually probably drag one or two of them into a chat with us sometime and talk about those days around town, what was happening in the whole industry. But mate, keen to talk to you again. Thank you very much for your time today. And I'll put some links up for where you can see John's work. Please check it out. And mate, chat to you again soon.
Best of luck with your podcast, mate.
Thank you.